There's a storm across the valley. The clouds are rolling in. The afternoon is heavy on your shoulders. There's a truck out on the 4-lane, a mile or more away. The whining of his wheels just makes it colder.
Community Forum is sponsored by the Easton Grange 196 and a friend of Yardley Wood Rink and the Easton Lions Club.
Welcome to Community Forum. I'm Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your host, and today is October 16th, I believe, 2024. And I'd like to welcome all of my viewers to the program, and also Lawrence, known as Larry, Novak, who is running for the 9th District State House of Representatives, and you're going to be voting for that office on November 4th? November 4th. So welcome, Larry.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate coming over to Easton. It is a lovely town, especially those old Richardson buildings. I think that the library is just amazing when you go up to it. And it's always good. And the reason I'm running, one of the reasons, I believe that our senior citizens need a tax break on their real estate taxes. And I will propose, if elected, a 50% reduction on the bill. So if your bill's $4,000, it go to $2,000, and that's to encourage remaining in the home. And it would be frozen at $2,000, like other states do. They paid their property taxes for years, and they've kept the communities alive. I think that's very important for the future. We are losing presently 85,000 people a year leaving Massachusetts. A lot of them are senior citizens going down south where it's cheaper to live. And I think that we've got to address those factors. I think it's one of the major issues that faces Massachusetts in the coming years.
And as a senior, I would approve of that.
Well, I every year, even though we have 2.5, my property taxes keep going up. I mean, I say to myself, how can I gonna afford all this in 10 years? You know, it goes up a couple $100 every year because the appreciation goes up in the property. But that's good, but it isn't good when you want a stable community with long-term roots in it. Seniors add a great deal of longevity. They bring really history to the town. They do a lot for the town, and I think we've got to encourage them to remain.
Yes, I think in Easton especially, seniors are very socially engaged, very active. You see them on the Tricentennial Committee that's coming up. You know, we're going to have our 300th birthday next year.
Which is a good thing.
Yes, and many people attend the Council on Aging events and programs. And those programs keep continuing, and there's wonderful outreach programs, and we have the Garden Club, we have all kinds of events in town.
This district, there's 27% of the people are over 65 years of age.
I see. And now tell us a little bit about the precincts that you will be representing if you get elected.
The precincts in Easton are 1 through 3, 4B, and precinct 7.
Okay, and we have 7 precincts, or do we have 8?
No, 7.
7, yeah. So that is a sizable majority of representation for the 9th District.
Actually, Easton is the largest community in this district. Brockton has a tendency to be larger, but they don't vote. So that defeats the purpose of, being in there. East Bridgewater and West Bridgewater make up 18%. Easton makes up 35%, and Brockton makes up 34%.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your background.
I was a lawyer. I was the former chairman of Massasoit College. I've been involved, I was on the Brockton School Committee. When I was on the school committee, the Brockton schools were one of the top in the state. It's sad to see how they have declined. And I think the future of any society is based on education. And I think that we've got to do something. And I don't mean that you have to spend a lot of money. I mean the quality of the teacher is very important.
Well, I understand from my limited knowledge of Brockton politics and school committee information that I've received that years ago there was a wonderful woman principal of Brockton High School who came in and revolutionized everything. And the Brockton High School was considered one of the top in the states. And when she retired,
Claire Applin?
yes, and things started to go downhill, and then they called her back, and then things got stable again, and she had wonderful ideas and was committed to the students, but since she has left again.
She passed away recently. I went to her funeral.
Oh, did she?
Yes, and she was sick the last year of her life. She was a wonderful person, cared about the kids, cared about teaching,
Right.
and really promoted the fostering of new ideas.
Yes, and those new ideas created stability. The kids loved and respected her. And I think, I'm a former school teacher, and I know that if you get the respect of your kids, then you've got it made. And you create a very productive and effective school environment. And it's a shame. But how much of the office and of House Representatives District 9, how much impact do you have on school system?
I think you can steer money to the towns that need it. I think that our priorities have to change in some of the areas. I noticed, at least in Brockton, the roads aren't kept up, and that's federal money, and they don't pay them. They use the money for other things. Some of the years ago, the decisions that made were faulty. They should have put the money into the retirement, which is underfunded now, the pension accounts, and those people plan their lives on a commitment given by the city and state. And I would hope that the city doesn't try to back out of any commitments down the road.
Well, I think Easton's been very fortunate because we have never taken money out of that account. And so our retirees are fully, their pensions are fully funded and will continue to be so. Also, they get health insurance and so forth. Well, Easton, now what do you think is needed here? What would you, besides the senior tax relief program?
I think your public housing needs to be upgraded. And that's somebody applying for federal grants. The buildings are old and they're not in the greatest of shape when you go up into the public housing area. I think that's a major area to address. I think that the school is a major, schools need more funding. We are advancing in new eras now of technology. And to be in the forefront, it's going to be the students must be technically taught. There must be more exposure to computers, more exposure to things of the future, A1.
But during COVID, they were, because...
Yeah, but we've never put enough money into any of that. I think it's the way of the future. I think the classroom teacher, some reason, all Massachusetts seem to get into administrators. I think the classroom teacher knew more what was going on than the administrators ever did. I always found in Brockton, when I was on the school committee, that we were administrative heavy. And I would rather be classroom heavy, where the students are the ultimate consumer. They build the future. Easton has an excellent school system. Brockton used to, and it's now deteriorated. And it needs to be readdressed. Claire Appling did a superb job at the high school when she was up there. Reagan, the Reagan brothers did a superb job. It's about the future. Education is about the future. When I was in law school, I had a professor that used to say, remember, education is always the future, not the past.
Okay. So besides education, what are some of your major concerns?
The major concerns are the roadways everywhere in this area, and I'm not. I don't know if we should be spending. I think the seniors should be helped more. They should be encouraged to remain in their homes as long as they can. I think that if we put money into senior programs, that will keep them, abreast of what's going on. I think the streets are being retired. There's a lot of federal money for retiring of streets everywhere. I think that we need to keep the tax burden low as we can so that we can encourage more people coming into the community.
Well, that's going to mean that the state's going to have to kick in more money if we're going to reduce the taxes for the seniors.
Well, it's a reallocation of resources in the state. I mean, some of the stuff we buy we don't need, and we can reallocate those. I'd rather put money into education, seniors, programs that are going to be beneficial to the community at large.
Yeah, can you think of any other programs that would be beneficial to Easton?
I think that why I would like really to make sure, when I was the chairman of Mass Associate, we made sure that we went heavily into computers. I had saw students coming out of schools that weren't properly prepared to read or write. I think that the classrooms had become too large. I don't think when you have 40 students in a classroom, the teacher can spend enough time individually trying to help the students motivate. I think we have to reduce the classroom size.
Yeah, well, we're thankfully in Easton, we don't have that problem with 40 students. So tell me, what ideas about Easton
Well,
that
I
you'd
think
like to...
the computer programs in Easton should be expanded. It's the wave of the future. It's the wave, A1 intelligence, the wave of the future. We need to be innovative in how to use that. Now, I think that A1 intelligence now, you say to it, it used to take me days, and I'm sure it did you, to research a case. Now you go into the law library, use artificial intelligence, you get it in 2 or 3 minutes, which take you 2 or 3 days before to do it. I think that society's at a new apex, that artificial intelligence is going to change the way that we lead. But I don't want to lose the basics either, how to add, how to subtract, and how to write. I noticed when I was chairman of Mass Associate, students had an inability to write well. And I think that is because they were using the computer too much and not getting some of the practical experience. So I think you've got to balance that. I think that money needs to be put into those programs. I think that we need to bring in teachers that have experience with artificial intelligence and show the students how to use it to the best of their advantage and to the best advantage of society. I think that we need to expand some of the public housing in Easton. It's old, it needs to be updated.
Okay, how would you do that, and what kinds of suggestions?
Most public housing is through federal grants. The existing public housing, when you go through the buildings, are in deplorable shape, some of them. They need to have the money to renovate those buildings. They should do it slowly with federal grants. And, take a building a year, redo it over.
Now, what about the MBTA demand? And now Easton has voted yes, and we have allocated 3 parcels for future public housing. Not that there's no demand that building happen, but it's available in case there is a developer that wants to come in and do it. So many towns like Milton have refused, and as a result, they're not going to get the state funding for their schools and for roads and so forth. And Easton, of course, decided that that funding was important.
I understand. I was at a meeting the other day. There's another override going to happen in Easton because there's shortage of funds. And I don't know if we should be overriding 2.5 all the time, because it impacts on people that are living on fixed incomes are hurt the most.
Well, I haven't heard that that there'd be an override.
There was discussed at the Republican Town Committee meeting the other night that the town administrator said an override. He's put a committee together to look at the override.
I see. So there hasn't been a decision, but so I haven't heard that he's putting a committee together to advise him on whether we should go forward. Well, that would include, of course, our treasurer and other people who are privy.
Well, I think it should include everything. I think it should include seniors that are on a fixed income. It should include what we need in the schools. There should be a long-term program put in place as a planning program as to what we're going to need in the years to come to be competitive. Easton is it's a beautiful town. It always has been a beautiful town. The growth has been extremely large in the last few years. And somebody told me that at this meeting that when people's children reach the age of maturity, they're selling a lot of their properties, moving out of town. I think you want to encourage those people to stay. So there's got to be some sort of plan put in place for the encouragement of long-term growth. When I was a child, Easton was very rural, and it was a beautiful community. And I remember when the Ames shovel factory was still around.
Yes.
And I remember those days. And some of the growth that's has come has changed the dynamics of the town, and that's change is good always. But you want to plan it. I think there should be long-term solutions. I love the old section of Easton where the old homes are. And it's so picturesque. It reminds you of old New England.
Yes, well, it isn't old New England. Now, when I was growing up, there were 5,000 people in Easton. Now there are 27,000. But the good news is that 38% of our land mass is in conservation, open space. It's not going to be developed. So we're very fortunate in that regard.
And I think the Ames family has donated a lot of land to the town over the years.
Absolutely. I live on a street, the last house on a street next to the woods, and I used to romp in the woods as a kid, and the Ameses owned that. But some 30 years ago, I think, they donated that to the adjoining NRT, Natural Resources Trust property, to enlarge and enhance that property. So now that's in conservation. It's not in private hands.
I think Oliver and his wife, Ames, did a good job. They saw the future and they planned for the future.
Yes, that's true, even way back in the day. And a lot of us residents here in Easton are the grandchildren of immigrants who came from Ireland and Sweden to work at the shovel works. And so we're very grateful for that inheritance and for what the Ameses did to provide jobs and stability to those immigrants. Anyway, so any other comments that you have?
I think the areas that I'd like to concentrate on: education, rewriting of some of, you being a lawyer and I'm being a former lawyer, is rewriting some of the statutes that are not relevant today. I mean, I read some of these statutes and I say, well, how is that relevant to today? I mean, they're outdated and should be taken off the books.
Yeah, well, that's something for a state committee to investigate, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it does impact on the residents here. You could go in and never think you did anything wrong and then be charged with something. I think that there should be a sunlighting of old legislation.
Can you think of some of the old legislature that impacts Easton actually today?
Yes, some of the grants, of the Ames Center gave, to the town with restrictions. Some of those are not binding today, those restrictions. And I think they did it with a thought and process. They own a lot of real estate still in town. Housing that they put their employees in. They were very progressive people for that era.
Yes, absolutely.
And they cared about people. They cared about the future of the town. They planned for everything.
Right, and and they provided Frothingham Memorial Park. The Council on Aging is in the Frothingham Hall. We have the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall, which is now a wonderful cultural venue, and the Ames Free Library. I and many of my pals in the 50s used that library on a daily basis. It's just a wonderful inheritance that we have. We were very fortunate, and I
And
know
those Richardson buildings are beautiful.
yes, and of course, Richardson was a preeminent architect in the 1870s, and the Ameses had sufficient funds to hire him, and so we have 5 structures here in Easton, more than any other town or city in the world. Most people know Trinity Church in Boston, and that's a Henry Hobson Richardson building. But one thing that maybe many people don't know is that architects and architectural students from all over the world visit the depot here in Easton, which is now the home of the Historical Society and Museum, and they learn about Henry Hobson Richardson and the buildings and so forth.
The library is magnificent. And when you go in that building, you just think of history.
Yeah. We have been very blessed, and I think that heritage has kept us very cognizant of environmental issues and environmental planning, and the reason that 38% of our land mass is in conservation, unlike a lot of other towns. And we were one of the first towns to respond to the state's Conservation and Preservation Act, where we could match what our citizens gave I think it's a 3% now of our taxes go for conservation and so forth. And in the beginning, years ago, the state matched it, but now so many towns and cities have gotten the bright idea of that, hey, this is wonderful. So our portion has decreased somewhat, but it still gives us hundreds of thousands of dollars to use to promote conservation in Easton.
I think conservation is very important. You have the Fields Park in Brockton. I think they foresaw the future. I don't think I'm against developing the fairgrounds in Brockton for housing. I just think it takes you need an open space for kids to run and play in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when it disappears, it never comes back.
Right. Well, sometimes it's a matter of the owners. Sometimes the owners can't afford to retain it without having it being rented or used, so that they're not getting the income. So that can pay
we're taxing.
A price.
We should, if it's maintained for open space, it should be a much lower tax rate. We have a removal park. They were by the Greckers family in Brockton. They've all passed away now. And I've seen the deterioration. They're putting buildings up there. And That's never good.
Well, we don't have that problem here in Easton, but
You are lucky.
we are lucky. And so tell me, talk to the Easton residents right now and ask them and tell them why they should elect you. You're the
I believe
Republican
that
candidate.
I will. I am the best educated candidate in the race. I have a law degree, a master's degree, and a BS in accounting. I am the only candidate that was ever elected to office on the school committee. I do not believe that either political party owns any seat. I believe it's owned by the people of the towns that elect them. I believe, and I was told when I got in this race, oh, Republican, you're a Republican, you can't win. I don't believe that one political party offers any better ideas than the other political party. I believe the ideas of the future. And I believe that we as people must come together and work for a common interest and a common goal of bettering society. We want to make it more open. We want to be, we don't want the discord that's happened in the last few years. They used to say, for many years they considered me a sergeant Republican. He was a former governor, he was an environmentalist, and I think he did a lot of good for the state. I think Governor Well did a lot of good for the state. But I don't want to be partisan. I want to do what's in the best interest of the citizens of Easton, the citizens of Brockton, West Bridgewater, and East Bridgewater. I want to come up with a common goal, a common idea. I do not want to be partisan.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thanh you for having me. You were very kind.
Larry Novak, pleasure to meet you.
And you too.
And when you have seen door to door the residents of Easton, what has been their most the biggest concern that they've
economics, the cost of living. I hear that everywhere I go. You know, they're struggling. To pay their taxes, the food, the car insurance, all the bills. And that is the number one issue that I encountered. I did not hear a lot of, I heard a lot of when talking to Fred Ames one day, we were talking about, the cost of going up and how, running the farm is going way up. It's the cost. It's the major concern of people.
So it's inflation.
Inflation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Larry Novak, thank you so much for coming today. Such a pleasure to meet you.
You
and
too.
To Easton residents, I hope you've got an understanding of where Mr. Novak stands on the issues and that affect and impact Easton. And so on November 4th, you're going to have an opportunity to cast your vote. And we hope that this program has given you information so that you are an informed voter. Thank you for joining me today. Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your host. Until next time, be well.